we wanted to cover change in terms. So we receive a lot of questions about change in terms and how the different regulations kind of fit together. So I'm going to go through three of the different regulations today. So Reg DD's Truth in Savings Act, or TISA, Regulation E's Electronic Fund Transfer Act, and Regulation CC's Expedited Funds Availability Act. So these three regulations, they have a lot of similarities, but their change in terms requirements, they don't line up perfectly. So we just kind of wanted to walk through those key differences, make it maybe easier to apply and practice in the future if you have a change there. But starting with the Truth in Savings Act, or TISA. So this is designed to make sure that customers receive the information they need to make informed decisions about their deposit accounts. And it applies only to consumer accounts. So TISA doesn't apply to non-consumer or business accounts here, but under TISA, there are some disclosures that must be provided in writing, and that includes your account opening disclosures, subsequent disclosures, which would be like your change in terms notices, and periodic statements. So when you have a change in terms under TISA, you do have to have that written notice provided. The TISA rules here, the notice must be provided at least 30 days before the effective date if the change will reduce the annual percentage yield or otherwise negatively affect the consumer. So there is some flexibility though in how that notice is delivered. So for example, you could provide revised account disclosures, but you're going to want to make sure that that change term is highlighted in some way, so we draw the consumer's attention to it. Another option is to include a message on your periodic statement or to mail a separate notice that clearly explains what the changes are. No matter what method you use, though, the notice, it should clearly state what's changing, include the effective date. And then the other thing I'll say is it's important to make sure that any terminology and fee terminology is consistent across the board. So your account disclosures, your periodic statement, fee schedule, and that change in term notification, because TISA is very big on terminology consistency. If we then look at Regulation E's EFT change in term requirements, so like TISA, expedited fund transfers apply only to consumer accounts, but the timing requirement is different. So under Reg E requirements, that written notice must be provided at least 21 days before the effective date of any change that's required to be disclosed in the initial EFT disclosure if that change will result in higher fees, increased liability for consumers, fewer types of electronic fund transfers, or stricter limitations. So TISA requires 30 days advance notice and EFT requires 21 days. Now, if you do have a change in term that falls under both TISA and Reg E, we're going to want to make sure that we follow the longer 30-day TISA timeframe. And in fact, just our team kind of generally recommends using 30 days advance notice for Reg E changes as well, because it helps to avoid if there's any regulatory overlap or crossover between that change there, make sure that we get that notice out in time. And there are some EFT changes that don't require advance notice. So it would be like certain ATM changes or situations when an access device is closed. So maybe you have a consumer's debit card that's closed because of misuse, or they're just not being responsible with the card. Advance notice would not be required in that situation. And then there is an exception for when immediate change is needed to maintain or restore the security of an account or EFT situation. So in that situation, the change can be made right away, but if the change becomes permanent, notice must be provided then either on the next periodic statement or within 30 days after the change becomes permanent. For Reg E, change in term notices, the delivery options similar to TISA, it can be provided through a message on a periodic statement as a separate notice or through updated account disclosures. But again, if updated disclosure used, you want to make sure that we highlight that change in term there. And then the last regulation here is Reg CC, so which implements the Expedited Funds Availability Act. And this is where the coverage changes a bit. So unlike TISA and Reg E, funds availability applies to all customer demand accounts, so that it's not limited to consumer. It includes also non-consumer demand accounts as well. So I'll mention though, some state laws do extend coverage to saving accounts. So just check your state laws there just to see what that says. But when you have a change in funds availability, such as the recent threshold changes, the notice requirement, it's a little unusual. So Reg CC, it applies to both consumer and non-consumer accounts, but for the change in term notice, the regulation only requires notice to be provided to affected consumers. From a customer service standpoint, though, it might still make sense to notify your business customers as well. If you think about it, a lot of times business customers are some of your best customers, and giving them notice, it can be good. Just kind of keep that communication open, be clear and consistent. So you can definitely provide it to non-consumers as well. That's just strictly the regulation that says consumers. The timing requirement then under Reg CC's funds availability is also different. So if the change is adverse to the consumer, that notice has to be provided 30 days before the change takes effect. And if the change is in their benefit, such as the increase in availability threshold, notice can be provided no later than 30 days after the change is implemented. Now, like TISA and Reg E, Reg CC allows that notice to be provided through a periodic statement, a separate notice, or again on account disclosures. You just want to highlight it in some manner to draw their attention to it. Something else I want to mention is that through all these regulations, if you have a joint account or multiple consumers on an account, one can receive notice on behalf of all. So keep that in mind. And really just while the TISA, EFT, and expedited funds availability, they have some similarities. They each have their own coverage rules, timing requirements, notice details that are different here. So really, we just wanted to walk through, kind of highlight those. That way, next time you have a change, you feel more confident in applying that and getting the change in terms notice requirements right in the future.
Emily, you may have said this. I don't think we're gonna get to the management thing. So I'm gonna just add a thing. Forgive me if you said this. If you're doing with change in terms with periodic statements, think about the last person that gets the statement, because a lot of banks send them out on the 1st, the 10th, the 20th, right? And so you say, well, it's going to be in the June statement cycle, so we can put this into effect July 1st. No, you got to think about that person that gets their statement on June 30th and then add your 30 days. Yeah, that's a mistake that I see occasionally.